Welcome back. We continue our coverage of the war between Israel and Hamas. There's a city under a city now in the heart of Gaza. Hospitals, schools, mosques, all of these civilian structures have been turned into terror houses. The IDF in its ground raids have so far managed to unearth a sprawling underground front line of the Hamas group, which is clinching proof about the terror outfit's depravity. What looks like a hospital to treat people is Hamas's command center. Israeli ground forces last week unearthed a terror tunnel underneath the Gaza's largest hospital, which is the Shifa hospital. The tunnels were shut with blast-proof doors, but the IDF managed to break into those doors. And what they found, there were air-conditioned rooms, kitchens, toilets, and also an arms cache. In fact, the Israeli Defense Forces published two images, one showing the open door and the other inside that labyrinth of tunnels. Here's an IDF report from one of those terror burrows.
In the Shifa hospital compound, we're underneath the ground. We are approximately between the Qatarian building is above us, and this is the way to the street, meaning this is a way that goes outside from the hospital. We are talking about a tunnel which is more than this, only this specific area is more than 300 meters of a tunnel. So this area goes directly outside of the hospital, approximately to one of the areas outside, maybe a mosque, maybe an apartment, and it's blocked. It's blocked and sealed. They knew that we were going to come here more than a month ago, and they sealed it. And now we're going to see the infrastructure of the tunnel. This tunnel is a complex tunnel. It's not the ones that we know. It's more convenient for a long living, like you have toilets and you have rooms that were built in order to contain people. But this room is an operational room that has communication with electricity provided from the sources of the hospital, meaning the hospital is providing electricity. This room was evacuated, all the gear was evacuated. I guess it was evacuated when they knew or understand that we're going to enter into Shifa hospital. Show you more rooms. More rooms. This is a room, where you can sleep, eat, make command control. It also has an air conditioning. This air conditioning goes above the hospital. One of the reasons that allows us to understand this complex is that we found the engine of the air conditioner, of course, outside, next to the Qatari compound, inside the hospital. Electricity, full electricity. The gear that was inside here was evacuated before we entered. But look at the ceiling. This is not just a regular tunnel. This is a high facility compound.
We just entered the Shifa complex. Behind me is the wall that guards it. This is the Qatari building. And we're here to see the tunnels and to go inside. What they discovered here in the last 48 hours is baffling. Just more evidence that Hamas uses this place as a command and control center and as a terrorist hub underneath this hospital. We see all the equipment that the fighters found here. We're getting down into a major shaft of a tunnel. This is a Qatari complex above me. We see the wiring going through it. It's pretty easy to get down. We went into the tunnel. Right now we're going under the Qatari compound. It's very dark. The walls are moist. There are multiple rooms here that we're opening. This appears to be a bathroom. Another room with an AC. The wiring to that AC helped the combat fighters realize that there's a tunnel here. And if we're moving on, walking down that tunnel, now we know that this connects to the network of tunnels that Hamas holds in Gaza. Underneath sensitive spots like hospitals, holding the civilians of Gaza hostage and abusing their right to medical treatment, to human rights and to any base human right that they have.
Now, the IDF over the last few weeks has actually managed to very comprehensively document how Hamas has actually been using civilian infrastructure in Gaza to actually use these facilities as military facilities with the sole intention of targeting Israel. So let's actually take you through a series of tweets that have actually been put out by the IDF, also by several journalists who've been covering the war in Gaza as well. This is, of course, Michael Starr putting out footage that's been released about how the army's released security cameras. This is CCTV footage of certain hostages being taken into the hospital. One Nepali hostage and also a Thai hostage who were actually taken to the Shifa hospital on the day of the terror attack, which is the 7th of October. Let's also take you through some more tweets. There are multiple hostages where hostages could have been taken closer to the attack sites, but they instead took them to Shifa. Basically, a lot of hospitals were actually on the way from the attack site, but ultimately a lot of these hostages were taken to the Al-Shifa hospital, where the Hamas terrorists already had an infrastructure in place to keep these hostages, among, of course, also storing ammunition as well as other equipment. Security footage also showcased and captured the IDF vehicles that had been brought to Shifa still show how a Hummer and a Defender were also kept there. So these are basically footages being tweeted by journalists covering the war. That's Michael Starr. The bodies of the two hostages were found in close proximity to the hospital. This is the Shifa hospital that's being spoken of. Corporal Noah Marciano's body was actually announced found on Friday. Yehudit Weiss's body was announced found on Thursday in a building with rifles as well as RPGs. So these are two Israeli hostages who were killed by Hamas, as the IDF has claimed. Now let's also take you through this video footage of the infrastructure that Hamas has actually built underneath the Al-Shifa hospital, which, by the way, is the largest hospital in Gaza, has more than 500 beds. Magazines had been found stored within the premises of the hospital underneath. Also, drones had been found on the part of the IDF. And guess what? There were air-conditioned rooms that you see behind me right now. That's footage put out by the IDF. Also, kitchen, a toilet was also had been constructed by Hamas underneath the labyrinth of tunnels constructed beneath the Al-Shifa hospital. It also housed a kitchen, among other equipment. This is the entire cache of weapons, including magazines as well as drones, that the IDF has managed to discover underneath the Al-Shifa hospital, which was basically used as a command control center by Hamas in the days preceding the 7th of October attack, and also, of course, after, where several hostages are known to have been brought here, some of them even killed. So that's the footage that's been put out by the Israeli Defense Forces. Now, it's not just hospitals that have been used as military facilities on the part of Hamas, even places of worship, including a mosque in Gaza, that had actually been used as a storehouse of weaponry and ammunition on the part of this terror organization.
אנחנו נכנסים כרגע למסגד שבו נמצא מתחת למסגד בקומת מרתף מחסן אמל"ח ומעבדה של רקטות של החמאס ומלא מלא מטענים וחומרי חבלה וחומרי נפץ. אנחנו כרגע נכנסים למסגד, אפשר לראות אותו פה. עכשיו אנחנו נרד למטה לקומת המרתף, אל המעבדה של הרקטות של החמאס. שימו לב, החמאס בנה קירות שלמים שיסתירו את המעבדה. הם צריכים לפוצץ אותם על מנת לפתוח את המעבדה. יש פה פיר אפשר לראות את הפיר המבצעי שיורד למטה בשביל שהמחבלים יתחבאו. נמשיך למעבדה. פה אפשר לראות על הלוח את הסרטוטים של הרקטות. נמשיך פנימה. אפשר לראות פה את כל סוגי המרגמות והרקטות השונות, מרומים שונים מכל מיני סוגים, חומרי חבלה. פה הם ישבו ותכננו ובנו את כל הרקטות במעבדה הזאת שנמצאת מתחת למסגד.
Now, it's not just a mosque and a hospital that were converted on the part of Hamas into some kind of a terror infrastructure. There was also a tunnel shaft that has actually been uncovered under a house where a study room and where children were actually being educated, that too had been converted into some kind of a military infrastructure on the part of Hamas. Here's more footage that's been put out by the IDF.
We're now outside a street which is parallel to the Shifa hospital. And it goes, the tunnel system that we saw underneath the Shifa hospital gets until this house. I want to show you it. We're entering the house. We're entering the house now. We're entering the house. In this house, it's a regular apartment. It's a regular apartment. In this apartment, you have gear and equipment. We're entering the room. We're entering the room. Okay, you can see the board. It's like a classroom inside a house. You have the warriors here. Our warriors here are working on the tunnel shaft, and then you can see the tunnel shaft. It was covered with the floor. We had to remove the floor and understand this tunnel shaft. Now we're going down inside the tunnel shaft. Just imagine how people are building tunnels underneath a home in a room that has a classroom. And here you can see we're entering into the tunnel. And the tunnel goes and goes. And then you can see the structure that we already seen of the staircase, a spiral staircase going down into the tunnel that we saw outside the Shifa hospital. And this direction also brings us to areas which is different from the Shifa hospital, meaning one direction goes to the Shifa hospital, other directions go to different places, different location where the terrorists can move using the safe haven, the human shield of the hospital, the human shield of those regular houses, providing them shelter.
Now, another sensational video has now surfaced. A few Hamas terrorists can actually be seen coming out of a tunnel and surrendering before the Israeli Defense Forces. These Hamas terrorists were flushed out of their underground dens. Their escape bid had been foiled by the Israeli forces, who managed to surround them at gunpoint. Each terrorist who came out fell to surrender before the Israeli forces.
זרוק את הנשק! זרוק את הנשק! צא החוצה! שכב על הרצפה! שכב! יש עוד אחד! זרוק את הנשק! צא רעי! צא! פגעתי בה! אתם רואים אותם? זרוק את הנשק! זרוק את הנשק! צא החוצה! שכב על הרצפה! שכב! יש עוד אחד! זרוק את הנשק! צא רעי! צא! פגעתי בה! אתם רואים אותם? זרוק את הנשק! זרוק את הנשק! צא החוצה! שכב על הרצפה! שכב! יש עוד אחד!
Now, ahead of an expected pause of several days in fighting, the IDF troops have claimed to have uncovered and destroyed some 400 tunnel shafts, terror tunnel shafts in the Gaza Strip as well since the start of the ground offensive. We'll continue our coverage of this and a lot more on the other side of this short break. Stay tuned.